Let me see if I can get, well, I will,
Jess, I'll give you the level of access in our Studio Cloud necessary.
I was going to say, I'm unsure if I have that right now, but I can.
You don't, I didn't make you I'm going to elevate you to.
I just highlighted from 11 to 18 and just ran this run button. It's not working for me.
Okay.
You hit the play button?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. So you highlight, okay. So did it, if you...
I got it now.
Perfect. I was going to say, sometimes it doesn't always show all of the response or sort of what you might be expecting, but that's great.
Thank you.
How do I get to the art studio that he used?
So the RStudio Cloud.
The RStudio Cloud underneath there is term and status and so on.
Okay, so you're in RStudio Cloud. Do you have a workspace in there that says the PharmaSug introduction to R space in there?
I have only one screen. I'm trying to tackle that is between the two. It's difficult. Now I lost that one. I still give it to you guys, but I click on the first link that is in chat. That's where I should go, right? To get to RStudio Cloud. By
Yes.
Michael, he sent it out, and there is a link there, and I click on that. Oh, maybe it's already.
And then if you don't have an account, you'll have to create an account. It's free. It's just
I created yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I see intro to R, and then should I click start and then get me there, or is it that's not how it works?
Yeah, if you click the intro to R under projects, that should launch the screen. What's that doing for you?
Should I click start, then intro to R, and then on the left-hand side, there is all projects, your project, trash.
Okay, so do you see the little hamburger icon up in the top left?
I don't
It's
think
like
I do.
It's 3 slashes. I have obtained my coffee. I will come back and
3 slashes. Top left.
3 dashes, sorry. Alrighty.
No, I didn't see that one. I think I know what you were talking about, but on the top left.
Alright, so can you see my screen?
I have to tackle back. Okay, yes, I see a screen.
So if you see this.
I see what you're talking about. Let me go back.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
You don't see PharmaSug, RTP, SDE over here?
No, I wish, let me get myself a screenshot. Green screen.
So here, let's try this. Alice, I'm putting a link in the chat.
Okay.
Because I see that you did go and in fact create you're in the workspace.
Okay, I did. I am there in the RStudio Cloud. RStudio Cloud is becoming Proceed Cloud, Learn More, but I don't see those 3 bars as you say the hamburger icon.
Okay. What does it say below RStudio Cloud is becoming Posit Cloud?
Spaces, I mean, on the left-hand side, your space, pharmaceutic, RTP, SDT, SDE may be in Chrome.
Yeah, if you see pharmaceutic RTP SDE, then go ahead and click that. Then when you see all projects, if you see that on the left.
I see it on the right-hand side of RTP. I click on the RTP. I don't think it makes any. Your project, and then
if you see the RTP, it should be there. But if you see your projects, then click all projects. So if you can flip back over to my screen share.
Your projects, and then your projects. There's no or your workspace. Let me go by that. Your project. Okay. No projects. It's like.
All right. So.
Maybe include into R, and then I click start under all projects.
So yeah, if you see all projects, then there should be one that says.
But when I click on R projects, there's no project. When I click on that is include to R, they're saying deploying project. Maybe that needs to be done first.
Yes, that takes a bit. That can take like 30 seconds, a minute. So if that's happening, then
okay. Now I see. Now I see what you're talking about. Now I begin to see. I think that is the studio. Now dividing into. I have 3 parts. One of them is R 4.2.1, and then the other one is the environment history connection, and then.
You're good. You're in the right spot.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you so much.
All right. So let me bring back up the instructions. So. You're going to be doing some screen flipping. Alice, apologies for that, but
no problem.
I have the instructions.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a question. I follow can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah. I follow the instruction on the screen. Everything looks correct. I'm just wondering, like when I click the play button, it basically run all the code above it. Am I correct?
Yeah, that does. If it our markdown can be smart enough to know that you haven't run the chunks above it to get to where you need it to be. So that if that's happening, that's fine.
I see. I just want to make sure. Yeah, I don't need to highlight some part of code to run it. So when I cursor is in one location, when I click the play button, it's run all the code be above the cursor. So like line 11 or line 26, everything looks correct. And also when I click the environment, yeah, I see the 2 data set pop up. And also when I run the neat button, yeah, I see another student ask the same question. Does it mean that when we click the neat button, it runs all the code on the screen?
Yeah, so knitting and running the code are 2 different things. Knitting is going to assemble the output document. So it renders all of the text along with executing all the code. So I guess you can think of that kind of like batch running, where it's going to start a fresh session and run top to bottom every time.
Got it.
So when you knit the document, it's going to run everything.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
And I'd have a half finished response to that question type.
Hi, Mike is Dipali, but knitting is not going to save the object in environment, right? It's a batch running, but it's not saving any object.
Right, because it actually runs in its own session. So think of like when you do a SAS batch execution, it runs in an independent session. So it won't save any objects or save any data sets unless you write out the data sets. But what I can actually show you right here is that there are 2 things that are being written by that knit document. If you see, and you'll notice the timestamp update when you execute it. So we have October 20th, over here, I'm at 10:13 a.m. That's when I hit the document. It's outputting the demo.html file. So I'm going to open that to view in browser, and then you'll see that's the document that we created. That's one of the products of it. And then we also have this AE RTF file. So I open that up. And then this is one of the reports that's being generated within that code.
Got it.
So just like SAS, if you want to save something, you got to tell it what you're saving.
Okay.
All right, let's take 2 more minutes, and then Jessica's going to take the next lecture section.
Can you go back to the instruction page, please? Thank you.
There you go.
So if I delete AE_DA demo HTML and demo1 RTF and hit the init again, it will create all 3 documents again, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I type in the demo/demo.rmd and it said the error object demo_rmd not found. Is it I need to load something?
All right, so let's, can you see my screen share so that I can walk through how you get there?
Okay, let me go back to your screen. Okay. No. Okay.
All right, so you can see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
What you're gonna do is go to the demo folder under the Files tab in the bottom right pane. Click that. And then you're gonna see the file demo.rmd.
Oh, okay. I need to.
When you open that, it'll pop into the top left pane.
Okay, I'll try. Thank you.
What is the difference between .r and .rmd?
The .r file is just like a SAS file where it's all R code, and the RMD files combine the text and the code together. We use that in the workshop because we can give you instructions, and then it creates that nice little report where you can see the code and the text side by side when you run the outputs. But in a .r file, just like in SAS, it's going to be just R code that you're executing. So there are 2 different types of documents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's making sense. I'm just another question I have for you. What is the norms going on right now in industry, RMD or R?
So in your day work, you would most likely use .r files at the moment because, and as we go through, we'll learn more of the coding and everything, but that demo document, the way that it's writing out the RTF files, it's our code that's writing out the RTF document. That's the byproduct of that. So just generally today, we're not seeing as much of RMD to create your TLFs or anything like that at the moment. And that's because of the type of documents that we produce. So, I mean, we all know how that pipeline works in industry, where if you create the documents, they're ultimately going to get combined together into a PDF output with someone using some other process to take your CSR table and put that in and all of that. So I would love to see a world where Markdown or its successor Quarto are used more actively for this document creation, but we hand our outputs out to the medical writers and then they have their process for assembling everything. So, yeah.
Mike, is R case sensitive?
R is case sensitive.
Yes.
Another thing, do you have any books to recommend to learn now, especially from a SAS programmer perspective and more like for the pharmaceutical industry? Or maybe if not, then generally to learn R first. And I know that is what you post something that is recently in LinkedIn yesterday or something.
So, I mean,
the two events was, right?
Yeah. So my organization has a service that I'm not going to talk about much because I'm at a industry conference, so I don't like to bleed commercial and industry things together. But we do have a training program. I'd say one of the most popular resources for learning R is probably R for data science, because it teaches the tidyverse, and is written by Hadley Wickham, the creator of the tidyverse. And let me.
R for data sciences. You are talking about book, right?
It is a book, and so the nice thing about this is it's online, and I'm going to post a link in there. So in the chat, I put that out there. Why is this one of the better resources? Because it has a free online version, and it's very high quality in it. It's not going to be focused on the clinical resources as much yet. So as far as book literature, I don't have a favorite material myself. Jess or Nick, do you have any other books that you'd recommend?
Right now, this is the one that I recommend.
So this is for people who has no knowledge of R and want to learn R?
Yeah, it also goes through some general data science things. So there's going to be sections of it that talk about like modeling and like the data science process.
Right.
So at least for what we do in clinical research, because the part of like what makes, I think, the transition of learning R harder for SAS programmers is because when it comes to analysis and things like that, we're told what to do. And a lot of the document or training on R that you'll find out there is going to be focused on exploratory analysis and the kind of the data science process and that exploration. So in R for data science, the things that you'd want to focus in on the most are the data cleaning, and the use of packages like dplyr and tidyr in there. So that's what we're about to start jumping into, is some of the basic intro pieces of that. But that it is a really great resource. It teaches you the tidyverse. So that looks like section, or the wrangle section starting at chapter 9. That would be like a great one for a SAS programmer to focus on, because that's going to be kind of the closest to this type of stuff that you do in SDTM and Atom. And I think that that's kind of important to get to before you get into the TFL type stuff, because data cleaning, data wrangling, as the data science world calls it, is fundamental to everything else that you do, because if you can't manipulate your data, you can't do everything else that you need to do with it.
Mike, there's one good resource too as a cheat sheet on RStudio. Brendan O'Dowd contributed a SAS-R cheat sheet to help you, like if you're looking at SAS syntax and know that, which we all do, it shows you right beside the R syntax, and it does still follow what Mike has shown here in R science. It uses tidyverse syntax. I did reach out to him. He has added transposing to it, so in the next version of it, you'll see like a proc transpose. But Mike, if I can try to dig that up, but if you go to RStudio's site, they have cheat sheets, and they have a section that is user contributed cheat sheets. Yep, that's it.
Where we can find that cheat sheet?
Okay, this is definitely the one that Nick was talking about.
Okay.
Dropping it in the chat. That will download a PDF, FYI.
When can we anticipate the next version then?
he said it would just take a few months to get pushed through. The only difference and the only gap I really saw in his cheat sheet was the transpose. And depending on how you use SAS, you could go your whole career without doing a proper transpose if you really wanted to do something. So
I definitely avoided it because for some reason I had my own ways that I liked to do that.
yeah, exactly.
I still think I've yet to ever transpose data without actively looking at the help documentation of whatever I was using. All right, so let's get started with the next section here. Jess, do you have the PowerPoint?
I do. I have the slides. Yes, I can.
All right, then you can take over screen share.
Sure. Okay, so hopefully you can see the PowerPoint, and it says we're at the point where it says working with data frames. Everybody see that?
Presenter view.
Of course it is. There we go. Hopefully, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So working with data frames, and I am going to be honest, here's where we're going to talk a little bit about some comparisons from SAS and R. And I am going to start off and say that I, unlike Mike and Nick, am not a SAS programmer, and everyone else here. I like to say I know just enough in SAS to be dangerous. So here I'm definitely a place where we got questions, we're going to work together through this. But I have been using R for a really long time, used it in academia before moving into the industry. So data frames. So in this section, data frames are flat sort of groups of table. You have the way to think about it is it's most directly compared to the data in SAS, a data, what I'm looking for a word, Mike or Nick.
Data set.
Data set, okay. That's what I didn't want to say, didn't want to be wrong. So it's a data set. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is how to manipulate these data frames in R. And so there are a few different functions. These are all functions found within the dplyr package, which is within the tidyverse, that we'll use in R that have sort of similar analogs to SAS. So we'll talk a little bit about how to use the analogs of keep and drop, which are one function called select. Then a sort of a where statement. In R, we use something called filter. We talked a little bit about, we want to use the dplyr filter. And then rename, which is easily the same as rename. So the first thing, let's say that we have our data frame here. This is just an example. We have our variables are A, B, and C. And if we wanted to just keep variables A and B and create that as a data frame, we would just use select A and B. And then you see the sort of the pipe, the McGrinner pipe we talked about there. So what this does in the select function, you just give it what you're going to keep. And if you wanted to, and then it'll just keep those, it'll get rid of everything else. So this is really helpful when you have a really big data frame and you just want a tiny piece of it. You can use it that way. Select has a variety of different ways. You can look at the help to signify which columns you want to keep. Or which variables. I use columns because it's just how I learned and think about it, but it's the same as variables. And so you can arrange it by number, specifically by name, by sort of like location or place. But select in this way, this shows you exactly what you want to keep when you're ready to keep a variable in your data frame. And as we talked about earlier, and you may have seen, one of the things that I think is really important to think about and to remember is that when you're doing this, when you're doing any manipulation to your data set, in this case, unless you assign it to a new variable or use that sort of arrow operator to save the state of the new data set, it is not changing your original data frame. So here, although we said dat and then select A and B, it is not changing what the dat data frame is. It is just showing the result of the function itself. And so that can be definitely something to keep in mind when you're sort of working through your scripts, and something that I still occasionally will run into. I'll realize that I forgot to assign things, and so it didn't actually change the data frame itself. Similarly, one of the nice things about select, and if you want to drop a certain column, and the way to drop it is just to include a minus sign before it. Excuse me. So in this case, you can drop one column. You could drop many with a minus sign and symbol, and that instead of having two separate calls, you just need to think of select. So select what you want or to keep, or what you want to drop, but make sure that if you're going to drop, use the minus sign. All right. So the other common, really useful tool to think about, is it's really common. It's using a where to say to figure out exactly which sort of rows of the data that you want to keep. And in R, we use the filter function, and the filter function works. You can sort of setting up the conditional, some of those that we looked at before. You can say keep. I want to filter, in this case, where column B, where everything is greater than or equal to 5. And then you can see the result. We have everything was greater than or equal to 5. If you have a character column, you could say, for example, I want to keep column A where everything equals sort of X. And you would put that X in quotations, and that would keep. So filter works for both sort of numeric evaluations as well as a character selection. So in that case, you can, it's a really sort of simple way to filter and keep just the rows that you want. You can add multiple filter conditions, and you separate them with a comma, and it reads it as filter this and for this and for this. So it's not, there are other operators if you want to do either or, but just know that if you're filtering over multiple and conditions, that a comma separating those conditions will do that, as well as an ampersand sign, I'm pretty sure.
So for characters, do you need to put in quotations? Say if you want X equals to A,
Yes.
A equals to X.
Yes, A, and it would be, you would use A equals
Yes.
X in quotation marks.
Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't matter double quote or single quote, right?
No.
No.
So in the way that SAS double quotes will allow you to evaluate the macro variables, generally single quotes and double quotes will behave the same in R.
Okay.
Nick, I don't think there's any technical difference for that I've come across. Is there?
I haven't run into it. I know sometimes you run into some weird code analysis where there was something scanning your code to check that you adhere to rules, and it seems to be picky for some reason. But I use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
I will say that I personally use them interchangeably. However, there are some organizations that have style guides, and it's generally double quotes are expected to be used unless you're using quotations in a quote. So you can't combine quotes if needed. But yes, generally but really, I think most people use them interchangeably, but there is a preferred style, and that would be double quotes.
Yeah, it becomes more of a question of consistency than like actual runtime evaluation differences like SAS
Right.
has for that.
Yes. Yeah. There's no sort of won't affect the time it takes. So this is really, I mean, really useful. I think of, you know, when I spend a lot of time in my mind thinking, okay, select, that's where I'm looking at the columns, and filter, this is the rows that I specifically want to keep, or the conditions that I want for my rows. Rename, yeah, go ahead.
One question. Like in SAS, can we use R and together, or is it symmetric what we have to use? Like when we are filtering the data, let us say that I have to have a multiple condition where some should be R condition and some should be and plus the R condition. Can we go asymmetrically, or it should be symmetric and condition, always and condition, R condition, or all the should be in the R condition?
So yes, you can do it. What Jessica has been pointing out here is that let's say if B is greater than or equal to 5, if you wanted to have an or condition in there, it would be B is greater than or equal to 5, or with the bar, C is less than 15, less than or equal to 15, something like that. You can use the or condition. In the filter function, if you separate conditions by commas, they'll be treated as and, but you can also use the ampersand to build up those compound expressions.
And you can include both and as well as or conditions.
Okay.
It can get a little confusing, but you can
just like any language, you're going to need to make sure that the logic of how that operates is correct, and then you can surround multiple conditions in parentheses so that they're evaluated together. So that's not going to be different than the way you would do that in SAS. You can think of how those compound expressions evaluate the same way.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions about filtering or selecting data? Another, way that we can might need to alter data is to renaming the variables. In this case, it's important to remember that the new name comes first, and then it's equal to what the old name was. And I'll be honest, I get this wrong about 50% of the time. But using the rename function, this simply just renames the columns. It doesn't create a new column with a new name. It is just renaming the existing column and replacing that variable name with a new name that you provided. But the important part, new name first, old name second.
Did you create a data set called dat then in this case, right?
So in this case, I didn't create a new data set named dat. I created a new data set named dat. I would have dat and then the arrow symbol, and then
okay.
yeah. So this is just showing, if I were just to run this in the console, it would produce this output and would not change the dat data set.
Yeah, that is a so if you don't assign something to a variable, it will print to the console.
Right.
So you can kind of think of that like if you want to view a data frame, or if you want to view a data set, like you do proc print in SAS and print it. Then it will just write to the console if you just type the variable name, or if you do these pipe sequences like Jessica has there, where we're saying take dat and then rename groups, or A to groups, B to values, then that will just print to the console.
Okay, great. Will this slide be available to us?
These slides? And
Yes.
the information in
We have all of the content. I'll put it back in the chat. But we have.
I think you mentioned that at the early stage.
Yep. So here, coming at you when I find a chat, putting that link right into the slides, and we are on.
I see. Thank you.
rename.
So just very interesting that I tried to use my company computer to access to the cheat sheet. They did not allow it. It's not secure.
Well, that link downloads a PDF file, so I get it. I guess I'll try to email the PDF file itself.
Yeah, we can include that in some sort of post.
I get it in my personal computer. It's just
Okay.
that company security has some reason that it doesn't allow me to do that.
Yes, that happens. All right. Moving on, feel free to ask any questions and to stop me at any time. This is a workshop for you to get those questions answered and as we work through these things. Moving on to talk about sorting data. One of the interesting things before we get to this function is that the order of the data itself often is not as important as it is in SAS. And I'm trying to think of exactly why and how to explain why this is. But you can do, if you're doing analysis on a data frame, the order is of the data if you're arranging by groups and things like that. It doesn't need to be in order for the calculation to work. Mike or Nick, I know there's some thoughts here to explaining things to make sure I'm covering that.
Generally, so right here it's saying dat or arrange the data set dat by variable b. So we can see that goes 2, 5, 7, 10 now. In the same, and I think it's on the next slide, we'll talk about descending sorting. You're gonna sort by the first variable, and then we can have compound sorting where you sort first by B, then by C, then by A, so on and so forth. I think that's the next slide though, right, Jess?
Yeah, and then the next slide is actually what I wanted to go into talking about caution and sorting. Of course, I didn't look ahead, but yeah, just really quick about arrange. So we arrange will automatically sort in ascending order or alphabetical order. Note that if you're arranging a character column, and note that if you have what appears to look like a numeric column, but it's actually the numbers are saved as characters, you will notice this because the number 10 will come right after the number 1. And in that case, it's sort of trying to sort it that way. But generally, as long as your columns is a numeric column, it'll sort numerically. So this is what I was trying to get at with what I was previously talking about, is that in compared to SAS, you don't have to sort most of the time. So the times when I would sort my data are sort of for presenting it, taking a look at a table, at the end, checking through. If I was creating a baseline flag or something that was really an operation that was really dependent on the order, I needed to know, what was the baseline visit, and to sort that way. If I'm grouping, you don't need to sort the data before grouping it in R. And so I think that the sorting, nothing horrible will happen if you're continually sorting your data, but if it's a really large data set, it will add some time. So I think that's one of the nice things. I generally, when working, only sort of sort my data sets at the end, or when I really need to create sort of a baseline flag. And that brings us to our next breakout session. So in this case, we're going to select a group of columns. We're going to use select. We'll use select to keep columns. We'll use select to drop columns. Remember, that's used with the minus sign. And then we'll subset some rows and based on a condition, and then rename a column. And I am going to bring up the that
Do you want me to walk through the files and everything, Jess?
You have it open. My project, it needs to restart.
All right. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Resume. Splendid. All right. If that happens to you guys, it'll wake up. Just give it a moment. All right. So what you're going to do is in the project folder, you're going to go to breakout 1. When you click in here, there are 3 different files that we've made available because we know you're all going to be at different levels of doing this, and you might want a different level of challenge to what we have here. So if you just want to run the code and see how things operate and have everything pre-specified, we have the file breakout_1_answers available for you. So this has all of the solutions pre-entered into the breakout work. So if you want to see maybe what you did wrong, if you're encountering some errors or what issues you might be encountering, then breakout_1_answers is going to have that for you. If you want to start from scratch and do everything yourself, we have breakout_1_blank. So you'll notice that when you come through this document, just like the demo RMD document, we have the header that's loading the packages. We read the data for you and bring in the DM and AE data sets that we're going to work with in here. And then you see this first code block at line 37 is blank. So that we have the space here for you to take on whatever the instructions are in the document itself. So do take the time to read the document. As you go through, that we have intro, it tells you that where we're getting the data from, talking about subsetting data. So we have the raw AE and raw DM data frames. And then for each of these tasks that we have here, we have instructions for you that are written in the text. So here, the first question is going to say, the select function is used to both keep and drop variables from the data frame. So it tells you what variables you want to keep. So you can fill that in the code location that we have there. And if you want some help along the way, we have breakout_1_helper. So here, when you look in the file, it's going to be the same thing as the blank document, but in each of these sections, you're going to see that you have some space here to fill in. So if you see these underscores that we have here, R is going to be mad about that because it's not valid syntax. So you can see the little x on the right or on the left here for what should be there. But it's going to go through and it's going to have those spots for you to fill in. So if you see the underscores, that's where you need to provide the code. As you go through this, just note, like we mentioned, here, raw DM is assigning to the variable DM. That will pop out in your data viewer on the left, or on the right, upper right pane that you see there. Or if you put in here and just DM as the last statement, it's going to print that down below what you see in the document here. So that's just an example here. When you're going through and you're doing these assignments, you can hit the play buttons and it'll execute that for you. Interactively in the document, if you just enter that DM variable there, it's going to show you a data viewer. So it has this nice little viewer that you have here, and then it'll print right down below the code chunk. And then additionally, what do errors look like? You're going to see the red text here. And then if you come down to the console, it's going to show you what the error is. So that had an unexpected input because it doesn't like the underscores here because they're not valid variable names. So that's erroring out for us. So choose whichever file you want. If you come in with the answers file and you just want to review what we have there, we have this knit button, just like the demo, that you can execute, and that'll go through. It'll produce the HTML document. I did make sure all these executed yesterday before I released the environment to everyone. And then you can review the outputs of what we have here. So we are at 11 a.m., so we have 2 hours left. So let's give 15 minutes to go through this first assignment. When we come down on the slides, I will leave that up in the screen share for what the tasks are. And then we are all here to answer questions. So we can go ahead and then go forth and do your breakout. We'll respond to the Q&As and feel free to speak up. We'll be sitting here if you need anything.
I have a question. What is a legitimate R name? You know, in SAS you can begin with an underscore for the variable name, right? What is legitimate in R?
Great question. So, a variable name must start with a letter and can be a combination of letters, digits, or a period, and underscore. If it starts with a period, it cannot be followed by a digit. A variable name cannot start with a number or underscore. Variable names are case sensitive. So age, and age are 3 different variables. So that's different than SAS for sure. And reserved words cannot be used as variables. So true, false, null, if. You could get an extensive list for that, but usually it's fairly clear what a reserved word in the language would be. But these are legal variable names, so you can start with the period. I recommend against using periods in variable names because of some other conventions in R. It can start with a period, but having a period in the middle of the variable gets confusing with package development contexts and the way object-oriented programming works in R. So that's considered bad practice. And then these are all illegal variable names there. I'll pop this into the chat for you all. But legal and conventional are 2 different things. So when you're looking at variable names, you probably want to follow the Tidyverse style guide. The 2 dominant style guides are Tidyverse and Google, and they are for the most part the same. Google actually says follow Tidyverse, except we have some other preferences. So I would personally recommend following the syntax guide that you see in Tidyverse. But again, legal is a different question. So to Polly's question, I'm going to walk through that quick. So in the answer key, if you look through that.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. So DePauli asked, what is cable head DM doing in row 51? So what you see here in the breakout 1 answers, so we created the variable DM. So to start here, the function head will take the first n rows of a data frame or an object. So like if I have a numeric vector, it's going to take the first 6 elements of a variable. So in a data frame, it's going to take the first 6 rows that you have there and print that. This is similar to using, I believe, head is the same function in SAS, but like n equals on proc print. So it's going to default to 6. So what I'm doing here is when you knit the document, I don't want the entire data frame to print. But also cable in our markdown. So in when you load the knitter library here, this is one of the functions that comes with it. Cable is going to style that output for you in the R markdown output. So it just makes it a little prettier. So if I have cable head DM here, then you have this kind of nicely printed data. If I take that out, then it's just going to print like this instead. So I did that in the output so that when you're reviewing it, it just looks a little prettier.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, and then let's look at the filter condition. What I think is happening here is that we have some weird type conversion going on. So yeah, this is kind of silently behind the scenes doing a alphabetic filter. Just me.
Okay.
So
So it won't give the expected results if I'm using this condition, right? And this was an accident. I accidentally put it at 0. Intentionally, it should be like as in SAS, like space, in quotes. But then I put 0, and when I saw the results, I saw it was not done as expected in answers. So
yeah, ISO 8601 dates, that is like strangely applicable because of the fact that the date format is built to sort correctly. Because I mean, that's like an edge case of this, but like if I said domain is greater than 0, it's going to end up using like the ASCII byte order of how alphanumeric sorting actually works. So I could say greater than E because DM starts with D, and that's going to work. But if I say greater than or equal to D, that character filter is going to work out that way. So that greater in a character variable, equality or like less than or equal to or greater than or equal to is going to consider that from a character sort perspective, if that makes sense.
Okay, yes.
All right, we're at about 11:24. So since we're midway through, let's take a quick 5-minute break for everyone, so that everyone can have a bio break, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes to get to move on with the next section that we have here. So I myself am going to step away, and we'll regroup in 5 minutes. Talk to you all soon.